Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the February 5th, 2018 edition of The Breast There Is, The Breast There Was, and The Breast There Ever Will Be Wrestling Podcast. As always, I am your host, Mikey B, WWE. On this week's edition, we will be covering the Royal Rumble recap and review, as well as the action that took place on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown Live following the Royal Rumble event. Entering the pay-per-view last Sunday, I had after giving my predictions, as I've done for every pay-per-view since last year's WrestleMania, I was entering the evening with a score of 47 correct out of a possible 82. And on this main card, we had, for the first time ever in Royal Rumble history, two Royal Rumble matches, not only the men's, but also the first ever women's Royal Rumble match. In addition to this, we also had four other matches on the main card. So it proved to be certainly quite a long evening, quite a lot of viewing. I'm curious to hear how many people not only got to watch this, but were able to stay awake through the whole thing. So I will now first just review the results of the pay-per-view, and then I'll discuss some of the highlights of the Royal Rumble event and some of the notes and observations I made certainly watching it. So of the six matches on the card, the opening bout of the night was the handicap match, the 2-on-1 for the WWE Championship, with champion AJ Styles competing against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. I thought just for the novelty of that they've never had a dual champion before in the company's history, and just to add more fuel to the fire with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn being kind of the top heels at the moment on SmackDown Live, I thought, as I said on my prediction show last week, that they would be the victors and win the title, but it wouldn't be very long. It'd be a short-lived thing, which I could have imagined AJ Styles winning right back, beating both of them or something like that in some other scenario quickly, because I suspected all along that AJ Styles was going to have this title heading into WrestleMania. So to my surprise, AJ Styles defeated the two of them, and so there was no change of title for that particular match. So that was a bit surprising, because again, it makes Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn look quite weak, and you don't want to do that to a lot of your heel guys, especially ones that are kind of running the program right now on SmackDown Live. So to me, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. If AJ Styles would have lost, no one would have held that against him, since he was up by himself against two of the best superstars on the WWE roster. So it was kind of strange. I didn't really understand why they went with this, but because, it makes Owens and Zayn look weak, and I guess it makes AJ Styles look even stronger, but in my proposed scenario, nobody would have come off looking weak. So anyways, they went with this direction with AJ Styles retaining. The second bout of the night was the 2 out of 3 falls match for the WWE SmackDown Tag Team Championships between champions the Usos taking on Chad Gable and Shelton Benjamin. So I also thought that there would be a change of title with this match, considering that Shelton Benjamin, since he's been brought back into the company, they haven't done a whole lot with him until recently. Him and Chad Gable have earned a couple victories or controversial pinfalls over the Usos in recent weeks. And on top of this, they appear to turn into heel characters. So the company, the creative team, is certainly trying to figure out what to do with these guys. And I thought, just as a change of pace, it would have made sense for these guys to win the belts, make them look good, and not necessarily retain very long for this first victory or championship reign for the two of these guys together. But it still would have made sense just to have a new change of direction in the SmackDown Tag Team division. And not only this, since it was a 2 out of 3 falls match, I think most people could have anticipated each team earning one of the victories and then going to the third fall. And for those who don't know what that means, when I talk about 2 out of 3 falls, it means 2 out of 3 decisions, meaning a pinfall, submission, disqualification, or count out. You have to win 2 out of 3 of those in the match. So, anyways, the result wound up being the Usos winning the first 2 falls, so they never even went to a third fall. And you could hear sort of the confusion and unexpected reaction from the audience there, the live audience watching this match, because it was, I don't know, it didn't seem like a very proper finish to the match. And again, it sucks the life right out of Chad Gable, and Sheldon Benjamin sweeps the rug right under from them, pulls it out from under them. So they once again have very little momentum on their side now, which I thought the company, since it was clearly trying to do something with them, would have made sense to give them these 2 really strong wrestlers, strong workers. It would have been great to give them the belts, and just to change a direction for that division. So that was a bit surprising as well. So started off the night 0-2, and then the third match of the night was the first of the Royal Rumble matches, and this one was the men's match that came first. I was actually correct in my prediction of the Royal Rumble match, even though this is considered just a single match on my prediction card. It's certainly a lot more difficult choosing the victor out of 30 people, as opposed to just 2 teams or 2 individuals, or even a triple threat. You have 3 individuals. So I was correct in my prediction that Shinsuke Nakamura would be victorious, and he was. So that was great. He's certainly deserving. He's been in the company now for a little while, and but hasn't earned any titles yet. So good for him that he is getting his shot now at WrestleMania main eventing for the championship. And interestingly enough, as soon as he won the Royal Rumble match, Renee Young came into the ring and interviewed him. And this is mind you, prior to the other Universal Championship match, which was set for later on this evening on the Royal Rumble night. She asked him, saying, now that you've won the Royal Rumble, who do you want to face at WrestleMania? And you would think that they would have, at least waited till the other match was completed, so we would know who the champion was still going to be at the end of this night. But as I sort of imagined and even said on my prediction show, and I think which is the sentiment shared with a lot of wrestling fans, we wanted to see an AJ Styles Shinsuke Nakamura matchup at WrestleMania. And so sure enough, Nakamura says that he's going after AJ Styles for the belt at WrestleMania 34. So this was unofficially the first match now we know that's going to be on the WrestleMania pay-per-view card, which is a great one. This is going to be a slam dunk match. I was saying on my prediction show for the Royal Rumble that this is a kind of match that you can build an entire card around, and this is already, I'll say this, going to be a match of the year caliber match. So it's going to be a contender, even though this will take place in WrestleMania, which is in early April. It's still, like I say, I'm saying with very strong confidence that this match is going to be one of the best ones of the year, hands down. So so we already know that. And there was already a lot of emotion, certainly, with Nakamura winning the Royal Rumble match, rather. Now heading into the 4th of the 6 matches on the card was for the other tag team championship on Monday Night Raw, with champions Seth Rollins and Jason Jordan taking on Cesaro and Sheamus. One thing I will note before I make my other notes pertaining to the Royal Rumble event itself that I found particularly interesting was that during the course of this match, now this tag team match, the 4th match of the night, Corey Graves, the announcer, made a remark about how exhausted he was already, and the feeling was palpable in the audience, how the energy was sucked right out after the first Royal Rumble match. Fortunately, it picked up again for the women's Royal Rumble match at the end of the evening, which I'll discuss in a few moments, but this is a problem right now in the WWE. These events are going way, way too long. I mean, who wants to sit and watch something for 4 to 5 hours? Like, that's way too much of a time commitment. And I think really if WWE is so primed on doing this, then only save it for WrestleMania, which is the biggest event of the year. Don't make this, happen at your other big of the other big four events, the other three of them, Royal Rumble, Survivor Series, SummerSlam. If you make these events 4 and 5 hours long, I mean, how do you expect to engage your audience and keep them engaged? So I thought that was great and very noteworthy, considering that an employee who's doing all the play calling remarks how exhausted he is after half of the event is done. So anyways, and this match some of these matches are not interesting enough that they should even be at the Royal Rumble. They could have easily done them on their many hours of weekly television programming that they provide every single week. So, and this was another example. This was one I also got incorrect after getting the Nakamura prediction right for the Royal Rumble match. I thought that Rollins and Jason Jordan would at least keep their titles for a little longer before Cesaro and Sheamus would eventually take them out and win the belts. I figured before WrestleMania anyways, but because Jordan and Rollins were certainly getting a strong reaction from the crowd. A mixed reaction, I'll say, considering that Seth Rollins is very much over as a strong babyface in the company. And Jason Jordan now, speaking of babies, he's really come to be a whiny brat kind of character now. Despite his incredible in-ring work, they've really labeled him now sort of as this whiny baby of Kurt Angle's son who now, always has to whine and get his way. So regardless, I thought they would keep that tag team dynamic going for at least a little longer just to see, what they would do with it. But Cesaro and Sheamus, they won titles back. And Jason Jordan took a shot during the match and basically left Seth Rollins without any assistance for the rest of it. And, again, this is fueling that just the idea that Jason Jordan is the crybaby and Seth Rollins had no support there. So it's making Jason Jordan look even worse, which I guess the company is certainly trying to do. But now it remains to be seen what they're going to do with these two guys, with Rollins and Jason Jordan, now that Cesaro and Sheamus have won the belts back. Okay, so that was the fourth of the six. The fifth match was for the WWE Universal Championship, which is a triple threat match between champion Brock Lesnar, Kane, and Braun Strowman. This is one we've gotten a lot of hype for in the last several weeks. And to be honest, it feels like we've seen this match already numerous times just on Raw or other pay-per-views. At least to me, it feels like this. This didn't feel like a special matchup, especially considering Kane he's very old now, and I don't think anyone figured he would win the belt on this night. So it was really just another way of preventing a Braun Strowman Brock Lesnar singles matchup for the belt, but also having a lot of their big monster wrestlers in the same match. So Brock Lesnar was, as I correctly predicted, he retained the title, which I feel he's going to hold all the way to WrestleMania. Since he won it last WrestleMania, he's going to hold it all the way till this one. And we'll see who he's going to fight. I'm just hoping it's not Roman Reigns. So we'll see about that. There's still this is the early staging now that we're learning about what's going to be unfolding for WrestleMania. So anyways, all we know is that Lesnar still is the champ. And now heading into the sixth and final match of the card, the first ever women's Royal Rumble match. And this was great. This had a lot of people getting excited again from the crowd after kind of dozing off for the last two matches before. So this was exciting, and much like the men's competition, the men's Royal Rumble match, there were a lot of surprise entrants into the match, which was great. In the women's match, we saw people like Trish Stratus and Lita and Tori Wilson, to name a few, which was great. Everyone loved the nostalgia trip. Certainly, getting to see a lot of these former greats in the ring with the current women. So, because these women, of course, never had the opportunity to compete in a women's match, Royal Rumble match. So it was great for them. And the men also had some great entrants and surprise returns such as Rey Mysterio, and there were a number of others too that were less notable but still interesting. So in this match, even though on my prediction show I was saying that Asuka is likely the favorite heading into it, it seemed like it was such an obvious choice that the WWE would not go with this and they would choose someone else. I had proposed that there would be a double elimination, a controversial finish with Natalya and Becky Lynch. I just felt they would reward one of the longer serving superstars in the women's roster with the first ever women's crown. But no surprise to probably anybody, Asuka did wind up winning the first ever women's match. So having Shinsuke Nakamura and Asuka winning the 2 Royal Rumble matches on the evening, certainly the Japanese invasion of the WWE has officially begun, if it hadn't already. And that's great. It's no secret to wrestling fans that New Japan Pro Wrestling is one of the top wrestling federations in the world, and they produce some of the best wrestling outside of the WWE. So yeah, the WWE, it made sense that they recruited some of New Japan's top stars, and to have them both win the 2 Rumble matches on the same night is certainly special. And there's going to be certainly probably more waves of these top Japanese talent making their way over to WWE, since both Shinsuke and Asuka have had so much success. So now that I've listed all the results, sadly I just got 2 out of 6 correct on this one, which on this pay-per-view, which is certainly below my standard as of late. This brings my overall total since last year's WrestleMania to 49 correct out of 88, which drops my correct percentage to 56%. So I'm hoping that I'll get a chance to redeem myself at the next 2 or 3 pay-per-views. We have definitely Elimination Chamber and WrestleMania. There might even be another one in between there too. That's how WWE likes to do it. They like to add many, many pay-per-views, more than one per month on average. So anyways, I'm hoping I'll get to redeem myself at the following one, which I believe is the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. So a few notes before I move on to Monday Night Raw and SmackDown Live. A few observations I made during the Royal Rumble. Of all the hype that of the tag team, the Bludgeon Brothers, was receiving since they kind of debuted, or they've been repackaged by the company following Survivor Series, they were nowhere to be found on the Royal Rumble pay-per-view card. And it's based on my observations of watching Royal Rumble all these years. McMahon has always loved having big guys be in the Royal Rumble match, just because it's, creates that dynamic, that interesting dynamic of how will you eliminate some of these huge guys. And considering that Brock Lesnar, Braun Strowman, and Kane were also not a part of the Royal Rumble match, I was wondering, is there going to be a lack of these big wrestlers in there? And they had enough, I guess, and the match was entertaining on its own, but I was very much surprised that there was no Bludgeon Brother appearance here, considering they've had such momentum going in the past 2 months. So that was one thing I noted. I already did mention how the audience was just completely worn out halfway through after following the first Rumble match, and I remarked about Corey Graves' comment. And it's great because when I talk about Monday Night Raw in a few moments, these comments did continue, so I'll get into that shortly. One thing I observed, certainly, which I don't think was part of any script or any pre-match, outline, was during the Universal Championship Triple Threat match between Brock Lesnar, Kane, and Braun Strowman. There was a point in the match when Braun Strowman gave a stiff knee to Brock Lesnar's head, which, and when I say a stiff knee, it wasn't, these guys, they protect their opponents and themselves, so they're certainly not out there to hurt each other, but he really clocked him good with a knee, and you could see Lesnar right away get angry and give him a real stiff punch to the head. which was a legitimate one. This was no just soft open fist smack. So, and you could even see that Lesnar said something back to him, which the WWE had to mute. So that was clearly an unplanned moment. I don't think Braun Strowman so far has a history of being unsafe as a worker. So I think that was just a slip up. But it was interesting to see, the sort of genuine, real response to that by Lesnar at cursing out Strowman and feeding him a real strong right hand. So that was certainly an interesting observation that I made. And of course, the biggest news that we all received at the Royal Rumble night came at the conclusion of the evening following the women's match. We had, as Asuka was crowned a victor, we had the two women's champions, Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss, who were watching the Rumble match ringside, come into the ring. And sort of it appeared that we were going to get the answer as to who Asuka would choose to fight at WrestleMania for the belt. And then, big surprise, former UFC star Ronda Rousey made an appearance, and all she did was come into the ring and I think she extended her hand to Asuka, which Asuka slapped away. And Rousey then just pointed up to the WrestleMania sign that a lot of these wrestlers do, indicating she's going to be a part of this event. We don't know how or in what fashion, but she will be a part of it. So that was all over the news, certainly following the Royal Rumble, that Ronda Rousey appeared. So all in all, it was a great Rumble. It was a historic Rumble event, certainly with the women's match being there, but I certainly could have done without two of these matches on the main card. Do the two Rumble matches, which are an hour each, and then have the two championship matches, for example. You don't need all these tag team 2 out of 3 falls stuff just to drag an event out longer. I mean, I wonder too if they made that best 2 out of 3 falls match, if they made the Usos win 2-0 in there, just because they realized, God, this event's going to drag out longer if we make this 3 falls. But regardless, that's their own fault and their own poor planning. So it was a long event, even though it was certainly at times a very entertaining one. So now, moving on to the following night, on January the 29th of 2018, on Monday Night Raw, we learned right at the top of the telecast that Booker T is now no longer one of the commentators with Michael Cole and Corey Graves. We have the return of Jonathan Coachman, who was involved in the WWE for many years before leaving to go work for ESPN. So Coachman is now he's going to be one of the 3 commentators on Monday Night Raw. We also learned that they already started planning the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view event, which is a 6-person event in a cage. I'll get into that more as the event approaches, but it's a cool match style. So we already had qualification matches on Monday Night Raw to enter this match. So we had the first 3 qualification matches on this week's edition of Monday Night Raw. The first one, less than 24 hours after competing in the triple threat match for the Universal Championship, we had both Braun Strowman and Kane compete again in a last man standing match for the first Elimination Chamber qualification match. And again, no surprise, Braun Strowman was victorious in this one over the aging Kane. The second match was for the second Elimination Chamber qualification match was between Elias taking on Matt Hardy. Elias was victorious here in this match, earning his spot now in the Elimination Chamber match. Also on Monday Night Raw, we had another Intercontinental title rematch. Since Roman Reigns lost the belt to The Miz on the 25th anniversary of Monday Night Raw, the Monday prior. He was granted his rematch, and The Miz was able to come away with the belt, retaining it, much with the help of his Miztourage members. So The Miz has the belt. So this, again, sort of frees Roman up to go back after the Universal title, which I know myself. I don't want to see have happen at least at WrestleMania. But we'll see what they do with this. I suspect Roman's going to be in one of the next week Elimination Chamber qualification matches. So we'll find out later on tonight when Monday Night Raw comes to us this week. But that's the suspicion I have, that they've been building a Brock Lesnar Roman Reigns rematch for a long, long time. Besides these matches, we learned that the Dudley Boys are being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame this year, along with Goldberg so far. And now to come back to the Corey Graves remark about being exhausted that he said shortly after the halfway point of the Royal Rumble event. He says he'd made a joke during the course of this Monday Night Raw broadcast that and this is a quote, he says, "I've called 38 hours of wrestling in the past 2 days." So, of course that's a ridiculous thing to say, but it's also very much, it illustrates how much time this company, how much broadcasting is going on and how much programming there is. And it's too much, way too much, when you got like a 4 or 5 hour event and then the next 2 nights you have a 3-hour show and a 2-hour show. Like, you're looking at 9-10 hours of wrestling in 3 days. Like, that is way too much. And this doesn't count. There was the pre-show, 3 pre-show matches at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, which I don't even know if Corey Graves is a part of. He probably was, though, since he has a hand in all the commentating these days. But, that's 2 nights in a row where Corey Graves, one of the top commentators of the company, is making light of the fact that there's way too much programming going on. So hopefully some of the brain trust there at WWE they listened and noted that maybe he's onto something. Maybe these people don't want so much, but they just keep giving more and more and more, and they feel that that's probably the solution to to their financial woes. So they just keep always adding more matches, more pay-per-views, more everything. So more is not always better, folks. And so besides this funny comment that Corey Graves made, the final match of the night, the main event on Monday Night Raw, was the third Elimination Chamber qualification match. And this one was between Finn Balor and John Cena. And after a good back and forth matchup, John Cena wound up being victorious during this one. So, which is kind of a shame, because I was thinking that Finn Balor would have certainly been a part of, been one of the top 6 guys on Monday Night Raw to enter a match for, Universal Championship opportunity. But I guess they want, big match John Cena in there instead. So that was what all the major events from Monday Night Raw. Moving on to SmackDown Live the following evening on the 30th of January. We learned that early on in the telecast, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn were coming out and complaining about how there was never a tag, and there was Kevin Owens was not the legal man in the match when he was pinned by AJ Styles at Royal Rumble, which is true. And so Daniel Bryan, the general manager, who's sort of been an ally of sorts to these guys, or at least been more in their corner than certainly the commissioner of SmackDown, Shane McMahon, has been. He said that he's going to right this problem by giving these guys a rematch for the title, but first they're going to compete against each other next week on SmackDown to determine who's going to get the number one contender spot at the Fastlane pay-per-view, which was the upcoming SmackDown one. So I guess I was right. There are going to be 3 pay-per-views, including WrestleMania, coming up. So we have the Elimination Chamber, Fastlane, and then there will be WrestleMania in early April. So yeah, so this matchup next week on SmackDown between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn will determine who will go on to Fastlane to presumably lose to AJ Styles, since they've already started advertising AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura. So, which I think in hindsight might be a dumb idea now, since they've already, how are you going to make this exciting and engaging for the audience when we already pretty much know what the WrestleMania main event's going to be? So It's a pity, but they don't always make the right moves here. And besides this, we also had a fatal 4-way match to determine the number one contender for the United States Championship. And the participants in this match were Rusev, Jinder Mahal, Kofi Kingston, and Zack Ryder. And Rusev was victorious in this match. Good for you, Rusev. He's a guy that often gets overlooked and doesn't get a lot of opportunities for belts. So we found out that he's going to face Bobby Roode next week on SmackDown for the United States Championship. And after I commented that there was no Bludgeon Brothers appearance at the Royal Rumble match, which would have made all the sense in the world to me, following the Usos coming out and discussing their dominance, they were then soon interrupted by the Bludgeon Brothers. So, at least they got themselves involved soon after, because Usos have beaten pretty much everyone else, and these tag team divisions are not deep enough that there's that many different exciting opponents. So thankfully, the creative team recognized that, okay, now's the time then. I guess we're going to start a feud with the Usos and the Bludgeon Brothers. So, which I got to expect that the Bludgeon Brothers are going to win the belts from the Usos at some point here. Again, just to mix it up, just to have some kind of a different scenario going on. The main event of the evening on SmackDown Live was a tag team match with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens taking on AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura. And during the course of this match, Sami and Kevin Owens, already knowing that they're going to face one another next week on SmackDown to determine the number one contender, let tempers flare, and they started getting at each other during the course of the match, which resulted in Sami Zayn just leaving Kevin alone at ringside, abandoning him. So we're going to see if this is going to affect their matchup come tomorrow night's edition of SmackDown Live, or if they're just going to say, hey, you know what, we got over it, we're buddies. So we'll see what happens, but you never know. These guys could certainly turn on one another, especially when a title opportunity is on the line. But again, this title opportunity is going to be wasted because we know that AJ Styles is going to retain. So I don't know. That's just from my perspective, and I just don't want anyone out there to get too excited thinking that we're going to have a new champion before WrestleMania. So anyways, there you have it, folks. This was all the important news and events covering the WWE this past week. Like I said, we got Monday Night Raw and SmackDown Live tonight and tomorrow night. So certainly we'll see more WrestleMania developments, I think, transpire hopefully this week and in the coming weeks. So we'll see how the WrestleMania card's going to shape up. So don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel below if you enjoyed what you heard today. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.